Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Brain Drain Newsroom. I'm Annis McLean, and it's Saturday, September 27th, 2025. I originally scheduled this for Friday, yesterday, but again, the day gets ahead of me. We've made it to the end of the week, and if you've been following along, you know it's been a whirlwind of immigration developments, some troubling, some complicated, and today, thankfully, some hopeful. Now, here's what I want you to know right off the bat. Today's show is about balance. Immigration coverage often leans forward toward what is negative: enforcement raids, political fights, executive orders, court battles. And yes, we'll talk about those, but we will also spotlight the victories, the reforms, and the shifting public opinion that suggest something important. The story of immigration in America is not written in fear alone. It's being rewritten daily by communities who stand up, by institutions that sometimes surprise us, and by individuals whose courage keeps the conversation alive. Here's what's coming up today in our broadcast: a victory in Cincinnati. Ayman Soleiman, a beloved faith leader, walks free after 10 weeks in ICE detention. His release wasn't a quiet bureaucratic correction. It was a result of community persistence. USCIS citizen test challenges. A closer look at the updates to the naturalization test that could make citizenship fairer and more accessible. Public opinion shifts. New polling shows Americans increasingly recognize immigrants as a benefit to the nation. We will explore why that matters. Rodney Taylor's petition. A double amputee's prolonged ICE detention is now the subject of a constitutional fight in federal court. The enforcement backdrop. From ICE expansion to California's new anti-mask law, enforcement remains as aggressive as ever. What it means, we'll connect the dots and discuss where all these developments leave us as a country. In the middle of it all, after our third, we will pause for a mid-roll break to talk about the mission of Brain Drain Unlimited Foundation, the organization behind this broadcast, and why we need your support to continue this work. So settle in, grab a cup of coffee, maybe a notebook if you're the type who likes to jot things down. Today's show is built not just to inform you, but to inspire you, because immigration is not just a matter of policy. It's about people, families, futures, and the kind of country we want to be. Let's start in Cincinnati, Ohio, with a story that has brought genuine relief to an entire community. Ayman Soleiman has been freed. Our first story comes from Cincinnati, where the local community witnessed something extraordinary this week: the release of Ayman Soleiman, and forgive me for the pronunciation or mispronunciation, after 10 weeks in ICE custody, ICE detention. Solomon is an Egyptian-born imam who has lived in the United States for years. He is not some obscure figure in the corner of society. He is a respected faith leader, known for guiding his congregation, offering counseling, and supporting interfaith dialogue. When ICE detained him, it was a shock. It wasn't just about one man. It was about the disruption of an entire community's spiritual and social fabric. According to The Guardian, his detention was a result of bureaucratic complications tied to his immigration status. There was no headline-making criminal accusation. There was no dramatic enforcement raid uncovering some hidden conspiracy. Instead, it was another example of how ICE often detains individuals in ways that seem arbitrary, opaque, and devastating to families and communities. But here's where this story shifts. Solomon's detention didn't fade quietly into the background. His congregation, his neighbors, and advocates across Cincinnati organized. They rallied outside detention facilities. They petitioned local and federal officials. They reached out to the press to demand accountability, and week after week, they kept the pressure on. That persistence mattered because yesterday, Solomon was released. He walked out to cheers, hugs, and prayers. Video clips show him smiling, his supporters in tears, and children holding signs that said, "Welcome home, Imam." Why this matters beyond Cincinnati. It's proof that ICE does not operate in a vacuum. The agency is powerful, yes, but it's also responsive, sometimes reluctantly, to public pressure. It reminds us that community voices are not powerless. We often hear about systemic obstacles, about how overwhelming the machinery of enforcement can be. And it's true, the system is daunting. But Solomon's case shows that when communities organize, they can move that machinery. It highlights the role of faith leaders and moral authority in these fights. Historically, clergy and faith-based advocates have been central to civil rights struggles. Solomon's detention tapped into that tradition. It's about precedent. Each individual case that ends in release sends the signals to others. Don't give up. Don't stay silent. Don't assume the system can't be moved. Of course, Solomon lost 10 weeks of his life in detention. His family endured stress and uncertainty. His congregation was left without its leader. No one can give that time back. And his release doesn't mean ICE has changed its policies. Tomorrow, another faith leader could be detained under similar circumstances. But on this day, this case gives us something rare, a victory, a moment to exhale, proof that community persistence can produce real outcomes. Next, this week, U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services announced changes to the naturalization civics test. For anyone who's ever walked with a client through the naturalization process, you know that this is the final, nerve-wracking step before citizenship. According to USCIS, September 25th announcement, the test will be updated to simplify the wording of civics questions, keep the literary portion basic, introduce field testing, and focus on the core U.S. history and government functions rather than obscure trivia. Why this matters? Because the test has long been criticized for unnecessary difficulty. In 2020, changes briefly introduced under the Trump administration made the test longer and arguably harder. Advocates argued this created unnecessary barriers for applicants who already face years of waiting, thousands of dollars in fees, and endless paperwork. The new update signals something refreshing, a willingness to listen to feedback. Citizenship is no small matter. It's the culmination of a long process that often spans decades. People work, pay taxes, raise families, contribute to communities, and then stand before an officer to answer questions like, what is one right of freedom from the First Amendment? These aren't meaningless questions. They're meant to affirm knowledge of American civics, but they shouldn't be hurdles that trip people up on technicalities. This update shows that policy can change in ways that expand inclusion. Implementation matters, but if this reform holds, it will make the road to citizenship a little less intimidating. Next, something truly encouraging. According to a new AP NORC poll reported by the Economic Times, a majority of Americans now view legal immigration as a benefit to the country. Yes, we've always believed that here at Brain Drain. For years, immigration debates have been dominated by fear-driven rhetoric. but polls show that narrative is losing ground. Drivers of this shift? Proximity. Most Americans, you and I included, know immigrants personally. When you know people, the rhetoric of fear collapses. Generational change. Younger Americans who have grown up in diverse classrooms and communities are far more likely to see immigration as a normal and positive part of life. These are, after all, their classmates. Economic reality. Labor shortages have made clear that immigration isn't about replacing workers, it's about filling essential roles. Values based. We are a nation of immigrants still resonates. Why it matters. Politicians follow voters. Policy doesn't shift overnight, but when the electorate signals openness, it creates space for lawmakers to act. Now, let me just pause here and give you what they call the mid-roll. This broadcast is powered by Brain Drain Unlimited Foundation. Our mission is to support highly skilled people displaced by conflict. These people are engineers, they're doctors, they're scientists, they're teachers, they're entrepreneurs. These people whose expertise the world desperately needs. We focus on immigration pathways like the EB1, the EB2 National Interest Waiver, and the O1 visas, which can transform global brain drain into American brain gain. How you can help. Donate at braindrain.org/donate. Volunteer your expertise, whether in law, translation, or mentoring. We even need people to be drivers. Subscribe and share. Spreading awareness is powerful and it costs nothing. Highly skilled people shouldn't be left behind just because they fled conflict. With your help, we can make sure their talents strengthen America. Rodney Taylor's petition. Rodney Taylor is a 56-year-old Jamaican national and a double amputee who has lived in the U.S. since the 1980s. He has been detained by ICE for more than a year. His health is fragile. His detention has been prolonged. His legal team has filed a habeas corpus petition. Habeas corpus is one of the oldest and most fundamental rights in Anglo-American law. It allows a person to challenge the unlawful detention before a judge. Excuse me. Taylor's attorney argued that keeping him locked up under these circumstances amounts to a violation of his constitutional rights. If a federal judge rules in his favor, it could set a precedent that forces ICE to rethink how it treats medically vulnerable detainees. Taylor himself said, "If I can change it for me, I can change it for others." That's not resignation, that's resolve. This case forces us to ask whether detention is truly about public safety or about control. Taylor, wheelchair bound and medically fragile, poses no threat. So what purpose does his detention serve? Next, the enforcement backdrop. While individual victories inspire hope, we cannot lose sight of the larger backdrop. ICE expansion, recruitment campaigns are targeting young people fresh out of college. Billboards, social media ads, and career fairs all carry the same message. Serve your country, defend the homeland. Join ICE. But ICE struggles to retain staff. Recruitment may bring people in, but how long will they stay? California's anti-mask law. Governor Gavin Newsom's new law banning mask enforcement by federal agents is already sparking a legal showdown with DHS. Legal scholars are divided, but one thing is clear: this will end up in court. Supporters argue that masks not only conceal identity, but conceal accountability and perhaps even shame. Courthouse arrest. Despite state laws meant to protect immigrants seeking justice, ICE continues to detain people in and around courthouses, undermining trust in the justice system. This backdrop tells us that while individual cases of victory and resistance matter, the machinery of enforcement is not slowing down. It's growing. It's digging in. It's fighting legal battles at the state level, recruitment battles at the federal level, and perception battles in the court of public opinion. What it means. We've covered a lot today. A faith leader freed, a naturalization test updated, public opinion shifting, a double amputee fighting in court, and the relentless backdrop of enforcement. But what does it all mean when we put these pieces together? Immigration policy is not static. It's constantly moving, often in contradictory directions. Community advocacy works. Iman Solomon's release is not just a happy ending to one man's story. It's a case study in how grassroots organizing can move the needle. Public opinion is shifting, and that shift matters. When a majority of Americans now say immigrants are a benefit to the nation, it signals that fear-based narratives are losing their grip. The courts remain a battlefield. Rodney Taylor's case show how constitutional principles like habeas corpus can shape immigration policy. The contradictions are the story. America is at once a nation that welcomes and a nation that excludes. The tension has always been there. What's different now is the intensity of the struggle and the visibility of the people who are resisting. So what does it mean? It means that the fight is far from over, but it also means that the ground is shifting, and in that shift lies opportunity. We started with a story of victory, the release of Iman Solomon in Cincinnati, freed after 10 weeks of detention thanks to relentless community advocacy. We looked at USCIS' decision to reform the naturalization test, making citizenship just a little bit more accessible. We explored shifting of public opinion, with more Americans now saying immigrants are a benefit to the nation. We told the story of Rodney Taylor, a man whose fight for dignity in detention may reshape how ICE treats the most vulnerable. And we examined the backdrop of ICE's expansion, California's legal battles, and courthouse arrests that continue despite outrage. Together, these stories paint a picture of a nation at a crossroads. Enforcement is intensifying, but resistance is growing. Public opinion is changing, but the machinery of detention keeps grinding on. Policy is shifting, but unevenly. So what should you do? What should you take away from all this? That immigration in America is not a single story. It's many stories, some tragic, some hopeful, all unfolding at once. And your role, whether as a supporter, an advocate, a neighbor, or a voter, matters in shaping which of those stories will dominate in the future. As always, I want to leave you with a call to action. Support the work of organizations like Brain Drain Unlimited Foundation. We're committed to helping highly skilled people displaced by conflict find pathways to rebuild their careers and their lives in the United States. Whether through donations, volunteering, or simply sharing our message, you can help turn brain drain into a brain gain. Visit braindrain.org/donate today and learn more. Thank you for watching. I'm Manus McLean, and this has been Brain Drain Newsroom. Stay safe, stay hopeful, and I'll see you next time.
Thanks for tuning in. We hope you enjoyed this and maybe even learned something new. If you did, don't just vanish into the algorithm. Hit like, subscribe, and follow us on social. It's the easiest way to support our work and make sure you never miss what's next. Want to stay in the loop without relying on big tech's mood swings? Sign up for our monthly newsletter. And if you've got the means, donations of any size keep our programs running strong. As a 501c3, your gift is tax deductible where the law allows. Together, we can turn Brain Drain into America's next big breakthrough.